I'm Stephanie and welcome to my channel. So I have had this deep growing interest in looking back at ancient spiritual traditions that were practiced before the introduction of Christianity. I just want to know, what did people do before Christianity? What did people do before the major religions that we know today? And I wanted to know, what are the common threads that connect us across humanity and that have connected us to the divine for hundreds of thousands of years. And so I've been studying that, and it's been really interesting. And after studying that, there were 8 themes that stuck out to me after looking. I am in the Pacific Northwest and it is raining it is after rain right now. The trees are raining down on me, so bear with me. But so I looked into spiritual practices from all over the world, from Europe, from Africa, from Australia, from America, South America, Mesoamerica, Asia. I tried to cover as much as I could, and just comparing these spiritual traditions from ancient times and just seeing what is connected. What are the themes that connect them? Okay, so there were 8 themes that stuck out to me, and the first one was personal divinity. Personal divinity. So what that looks like is having a personal relationship with the divine, having divine power, having a direct connection to the spiritual realm. There's no intermediary. We as individuals have a connection to God, to source, to whatever the divine was considered. And we have multiple ways that we can connect, and in our personal power. And basically what I took it to mean in terms of personal divinity was almost like a spiritual sovereignty. There was a spiritual sovereignty that existed before these major authoritarian religious systems. And that sovereignty looked like, which sovereignty means supreme, absolute, uncontrollable power within a state to govern itself. So within us to govern ourselves and act independently. Spiritually, we were, and we still are, sovereign over our power, our intentions, our attention, our words, our thoughts, our practices, and most of all, our relationship with the divine. We are sovereign over that, no matter what anybody says. And that was something that was more apparent in ancient traditions. The next theme that I noticed was there was a big emphasis on ceremonies and rituals to celebrate different things. They would have seasonal festivals. There'd be festivals that had to do with the cycles of nature or the cycles of life, fertility rites, offerings. There was sacredness and deep importance for these ceremonies and these rituals, and they were done as a spiritual practice. Ceremonies and rituals and festivals were heavily emphasized. The third theme, reverence. Reverence for the earth. Reverence for nature. Reverence for the cycles of nature, the rhythm of nature. This was very prevalent. The definition of reverence is a profound emotion and attitude of deep respect, veneration, and awe, often directed towards sacred, divine, or highly honored people, places, or objects. And some examples of this reverence for the cycles was the wheel of the year, sun and moon worship, and then considering the land holy, or considering the earth holy. The next theme was sacred sites in nature. So this was also really prevalent. Okay, sacred sites in nature. So worshiping in sacred groves. I'm going to do a whole video about sacred groves. Celtic paganism. Druids, they worshipped in sacred groves, oak groves, and I'm working on having my own energetically, spiritually connected sacred grove. But they had sacred groves. They considered rivers or fire to have divine significance. Mountains, there was sacredness, and worship was done in these natural sites, not in like a church. Some were done in temples and things like that, but there was a lot of this worshiping in nature, worshiping in places in nature. Number 5, ancestral veneration and connection. This one was almost in every single tradition. So a lot of these were in sporadic, like they were in some of them, but a good amount of them. Ancestral veneration was in almost every single one. And this has to do with honoring our ancestors, calling on them for help, having an altar or having remembrance of them. Like when they die, we don't just let them go and forget about them. They become part of our journey moving forward. And then ancestral veneration. So the definition of veneration is a profound, respectful honor shown toward holy figures, saints, or sacred objects, distinct from adoration reserved solely for God. The next theme I found was shamanism. This was in quite a lot of them too. Not every single one, but quite a lot. And I look at shamanism as the connection between the seen and the unseen, the physical realm and the spiritual realm. And examples of shamanism are divination and animism. Shamanism is one of the world's oldest spiritual healing and cultural traditions, dating back thousands of years, and it's based in animism, which is the belief that all things, nature, animals, elements, possess a spirit. A shaman acts as an intermediary between the physical and spiritual worlds, entering altered states of consciousness, often via trance, to heal, to seek guidance, and to restore balance. Divination is the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or the unknown through supernatural or occult means. Some examples would be using astrology, tarot cards, reading tea leaves, crystal balls. Those are examples of divination, and divination was mentioned a lot in the traditions. And I categorized that under shamanism. All right, the next one was dance, drums, and song. Music is so prevalent. Songs, chants, drumming, dancing had such a significance in spiritual practice that I put that on here. And yeah, utilizing music for spiritual connection was a big part of many traditions all over the world. And the final one that I have is harmony and balance. There was a big emphasis on harmony and balance. There would be harmony and balance between gods, like a feminine god and a masculine god, or karma, like the law of karma. But and going back to masculine and feminine, all of these traditions typically had feminine representations of the divine, not just masculine. And I think a lot of our modern religions only have masculine representations of the divine. The feminine representations they have are very specific. Typically, they have little to do with the main part of the religion. They have these little side parts. But in these older traditions, there was a balance between masculine and feminine. The divine, it was like yin and yang. It was like a divine masculine and a divine feminine, and they are equal in their importance, if that makes sense. And that was typically represented through polytheism, which was multiple deities. So there would be a male deity and a female deity, or some type of natural element that represented masculine and a natural element that represented feminine. And so, yeah, that was a big emphasis, was this harmony and balance. I saw that throughout all of these. I plan to delve deeper into each of these themes, and especially their subsets. There was all these little practices that came together for me to have this conclusion of these themes, but I really want to delve more into the specific practices that make up these themes. But this is a good starting point. I thought this was good information to start with. It's something to think about as we move forward as a society, as a world. You know, maybe some things were stripped away that connected us as humans that need to come back. Especially to me, the balance and harmony, especially the balance of the feminine and the masculine having equal power. Maybe they have different things that they bring to the table, but there's a balance to it. And then also connecting with nature, the sacredness of nature, the sacredness of the earth, the sacredness of music, our words, our thoughts, our ancestors. So I think all of this is really powerful and important, and that is why I wanted to share it. And I will continue to study and delve into these things, share these practices, how I practice them. The next video is going to be on what is a sacred grove, and I really appreciate you being with me for this video today. Thank you so much. I hope to see you again.